J'effectue la lecture des consignes en anglais ou en français?
Anglais.
Each team has 24 minutes to present its cases to the judges. The time of presentation will be so divided. The first 12 minutes of the presentation are considered as being protected, meaning that the judges cannot interrupt the team. The next 10 minutes are non-protected. The judges have the possibility of interrupting the presentation in order to ask questions of clarification on the subject presented at this moment. The judge will have to limit himself to 50 seconds to ask his question. The team has to answer the question, but can then continue its presentation without waiting for the agreement of the judge. The judges cannot ask questions on a subject having already been covered or which has not been presented yet. These questions must be approached during the period of questions at the end of the presentation. The last 2 minutes of the presentation are meant to conclude the presentation and are shelled from question of the judges. I will show boards showing the remaining time when there will be 12 minutes, 7 minutes, 2 minutes, and 30 seconds, and I will make the countdown for the last 10 seconds. A period of question of a maximal time of 5 minutes is assigned to the jury at the end of the presentation. I would like to remind the jury that it is mandatory to ask at least one question during this period. I will invite the judges to introduce themselves and then the team can begin.
My name is Leo LeBlanc and I'm a retired consultant and I worked in a large cooperative most of my career. I've been a part-time professor here at the university 12 years. And I've done some economic development basically around cooperatives in Africa and South America.
Good morning, I'm Michelle Gadet, and I'm the Manager for Program Governance Expertise at the Federal Government Department of Atlantic and Opportunities Agencies.
A moment ago when we entered the room, you shook our hands. It went very well. We were the right firmness and it was the right amount of time. Now imagine we had entered and simply bowed in your direction. Imagine the uneasy feeling you would have gotten and the uncertainty you would have had going forward. Now imagine that for a continuous business relationship. This is what happens when you don't understand the culture that you're dealing with and you don't make the appropriate adjustments in order to continue. Hi, my name is Michael Rhodes. I'm with my colleagues Kelsey Monroe and Shannon Pogany, and we're here with True North Consulting today to consult with you on how to properly develop the market in Mexico for your company. We'll begin with our North model. This is a model we've developed in order to organize the solution that we have for you. It begins with the now. The now is looking at the company as it currently is and its current situation. We follow that along with current opportunities presented with the company and how best to capitalize on those opportunities. We then summarize that in the recommendation and we go over exactly what strategy is best to be implemented in order to get those opportunities to be taken advantage of. Then we'll follow along with the timeline, exactly how this will be implemented over a 24-month period, and finishing off with horizons. This is what we see on the future in terms of financial forecasts and also a few ideas we may have regarding other opportunities for your company. So we'll begin with the now.
So as Michael said, we're going to begin with the situation of your company, just so that we're all on the same page. So the situation is that Visa Machine Vision has to overcome cultural and communication challenges in order to take full advantage of the global markets. And Shannon will take us away with our mandate.
So our True North mandate today will be to outline a development plan for Visa Machine Vision to help take full advantage of global opportunities. So today's solution is a little bit more tailored towards the Mexican market. However, we're fully confident that these similar steps can be taken towards growing in different countries in the future as well. So some key performance indicators that we've built into our presentation today to measure the success is to secure at least 2 more customers in the Mexican market in our time frame, which is 24 months, so 2 years, as well as increase the response rate of your outreach efforts to 15 to 20%, which is double what you currently have. So now Michael will take us away through the first portion of our analysis.
So we decided to begin with a SWOT analysis of the ZUT machine vision. And first off, we take a look at the strengths. There are a lot. We didn't include them all in here because there are so many. But we want to focus on what is most tailored to the current situation. So it begins with the product customization. The ZUT machine vision is very good at customizing the product to suit the consumer's needs, and this will be integral in the future business operations of the company. There's also the product quality. Because of the customization and afterwards, the product works excellently well and the customers are very happy with the finished product. This is a strong strength of the company moving forward. Now, all companies do have a few weaknesses that do need to be mitigated. For the ZUT machine vision, it is the lengthy sales process. This is largely due to the customization of the product. When trying to find the exact fit and the right fit for the company, it does take time. This is something that we believe is just inherent risk, an inherent weakness that cannot necessarily be removed, but just needs to be mitigated through a very strong relationship. There's also the cultural differences. Working with global consumers and global customers, there are a lot of cultural differences, as mentioned previously, which can cause a lot of friction in the relationship and can cause a lot of confusion. There are some opportunities, of course, for the company. There's the growing global demand. So your product is excellent and customizable, and there's very little direct competition, and there's no one really doing what you're doing. This is a strong competitive advantage and allows you to take advantage of these global markets. One specific is the Mexican market. This is a market that you currently have three customers there right now, but there's a lot of opportunity to further your customer development and add new customers to your book of business. Now, there are some threats on the international market, of course. This would be the government regulations. This has caused some issues in entering areas such as Europe with the X-ray technology, the issues there. And there's also the competition existing. While no one's doing exactly what you're doing, there are companies who will try and tell your customers they do it better.
So just to sum up what Michael just said, we're trying to overcome cultural differences in order to take advantage of the global opportunities. So leading off of that, I'm going to take us through our next analysis, which is the culture analysis. So here we've decided to look at Mexico versus Canada to kind of see where the cultural differences really lie and what this means and how this has become challenging for the ZUT machine vision in recent times. So the first major difference is power distance. On the Hofstede cultural dimensions, Mexico is a very high power distance of about 80, whereas Canada is only at about 40. So this means that Mexico has a very hierarchical structure in the workplace. So it's going to be the top heads of the company making most of the decisions. And so this is very important for Canadians to note, as in Canadian businesses, sometimes it's more flat and decisions are made collectively. This also plays into individualism. Canada has quite a high individualism rate compared to Mexico. So this means that in Canada, we like to work more individually, whereas in Mexico, people do tend to work more as a group and as a collective team in order to get things done. The next major difference is uncertainty avoidance. So Mexico has a high uncertainty avoidance. They do not like to take risks. Whereas Canada, we might take more risks and we might make more decisions that we may not be so sure about. So these are some key things to note. In long-term orientation and masculinity, we are fairly similar, so we don't think those are too important to touch on at this time. So taking this, we do need to know that cultural awareness is the key to success, and we will need to be aware of the Mexican culture moving forward. And Shannon will take us away with our last analysis.
So taking a look at our gap analysis here, we're comparing the ZUT machine vision right now compared to what we envision after the implementation of our plan in the future. So in the current situation, we have ineffective client outreach. So you're sending out many emails and not having a very high response rate or success rate through that mode. Almost 100 Mexican companies have been contacted and not to no avail. Also, we have difficulty sharing vision, and so we think that the reasons for our outreach lacking in success might be because the people we're outreaching aren't fully understanding of the message we're trying to convey. Also, travel is required. Often you're making 2 or 3 trips per client, which is expensive, and want to make sure that these funds can be used as effectively as possible, which might not be happening right now. And lastly, cultural differences, the awareness and sensitivity might not be there fully yet, And so we're going to look at improving that in the future. So taking a look at the future section, we envision a richer communication with a higher response rate that we'll outline later. Also having a clearer sales strategy with a persuasive sales pitch in order to communicate our competitive advantage. And also we're envisioning for you to have a more efficient sales process. So maybe using those travel funds a little bit more effectively, and also having cultural bonding, so having a better understanding of the Mexican versus Canadian cultures in order to minimize miscommunications and some errors and delays that could occur through that. So our key takeaway from this analysis is that communication is a consistent gap, and you should focus your efforts on improving this aspect. So a quick summary of the key takeaways of our analysis is that there are many global opportunities available to you, as well as the necessity of cultural awareness and communication is truly key in being able to fully grasp them and to be as efficient as possible.
Based on all of that information that you just received, here's our recommendation. We recommend that Lizette Machine Vision needs to focus on improving their communication and their cultural awareness in order to take advantage of all of the global opportunities available. We will be focusing on Mexico today, seeing as that was outlined, and that was what you asked us to do. However, we do believe that these strategies that we will talk about in the future can help you in other markets, and you can take these ideas forward in any other market that you choose. So our first point of strategy is culture. We've already talked about the fact that culture is very important here, and we need to understand the differences in the culture. So the first strategy we've outlined is to give Spanish lessons to the marketing manager as well as to 2 engineers. Moving to Mexico, they do speak Spanish there, and it will be very important for the marketing manager and 2 engineers to be able to speak at least a little bit of Spanish in order to make sure that their ideas are being communicated well and you are really understanding what they want with this product. We also want to create a sales tracker in order to keep track of follow-up appointments. In the Mexican culture, it is very important to follow up, and they really focus on relationships. It's also important that they might see it as if you don't call them back when they don't answer, it's not important. So you need to make sure that you're always following up and to make sure they're understanding your message. So we envision this as an Excel spreadsheet where you'll have the client down the side with when you've contacted them in one column, and it'll automatically populate with when you should contact them next in order for you to see when is a good time for you to progress this relationship. We also want to put the whole company through a cultural sensitivity workshop. This is to give the whole company an idea of the Mexican culture so that they're aware of regular business practices. So we've outlined a couple of ideas here, such as keeping an open mind when it comes to food. Mexican food does differ from Canadian food, and if you go to Mexico, you will probably be eating it, so you do need to keep an open mind there. You also want to understand the communication styles and the business etiquette of Mexico so that you can really make a good impression and foster that relationship. The last point under the cultural sensitivity workshop is to work on building lasting personal relationships. So we've already discussed this. This is very important to the Mexican people. They don't necessarily like to get right down to business. They really want to make sure they know you well and you have a good relationship before you start doing business. So this is key. Also, the last point here is that we do want to hire a translation company and a bilingual sales associate, just so that in the short term, between learning Spanish and understanding the culture, you do have someone who can help with these meetings with any Mexican clients that you have so that you are getting your ideas across and everything is going smoothly. So I will pass it along to Michael for sales.
Thank you, Kelsey. So we've outlined a sales process here that's really going to walk you through how to approach and how to interact with each client in Mexico and also around the world. It begins with the product knowledge, which is how these potential customers are going to view your product before you approach them. Taking a look at that, we have the translating the website. So currently the website is in English, and when you click on the translate button, it goes to Google Translate. This is probably not going to hold up for customers in Mexico who are researching the product. It would be much more effective if it would translate the website into French or Spanish. Therefore, they can read it fluently and they can understand much more clearly what is being sold to them and why they should be buying it. There's also the Mexican Seafood Trade Show. Currently, the company is visiting trade shows in Boston for seafood, but this is not necessarily where the Mexican customers are going to be. So by going to a Mexican Seafood Trade Show, you are able to reach the Mexican customers directly, and they will learn much more about your product that way. There's also prospecting. So currently, this is how to find your customers. Currently, the existing methods are clearly working very well in the sense that you have been able to contact thousands of customers via email. However, we do have some recommendations for the Mexican companies, such as OJ Shrimps and Pronomar SA to CV, as customers who are potential options for your company. Also, you'll want to be recontacting previous prospects. As Kelsey mentioned, in the Mexican culture, with a simple email or simple phone call, if they do not respond to you and you do not send a second contact or multiple contacts thereafter, they'll consider unimportant and will then disregard. So it's very important to recontact these prospects in order to rebuild that relationship and potentially gain new customers going forward. Now Shannon will take you through the next few steps.
So the next 2 steps of the sales process that you can use to advance development plan into entering Mexico will be the new approach. So how will you first contact your prospects? Currently you're sending an email message that are often going unresponded or unsuccessful. And so we recommend that you send an email with a video message instead. So video communication and seeing facial expressions and the nonverbal communication makes communication much richer. And so we believe that this would set Lisette apart from competitors in the approach method, which would catch the attention of the people you're outreaching to more effectively. These video messages would be in English and then with Spanish subtitles until your marketing managers can be a little bit more fluent. Also, this will come with a link to the Lisette website, which will be translated into Spanish by then, for any additional information that customers are looking for, and they can look through PDFs of your past customized machines that they can look through and learn about your capabilities. And also, another important part of the approach is to focus on cultivating relationships, not focusing solely on the sale. So this tends to be an American and a Canadian tendency to get down to business right away. However, it's not so much the approach that they take in Mexico. And so to be aware of this in communication, not to be too aggressive and to limit these videos to 2 minutes, not too much information, just to present yourself and your idea and your interest. The next part is the needs assessment. So how will you assess the needs of your customers? This is by far your biggest differentiator. You are very much able to customize your machines to all of your customers and meet their needs as best as you can. And so we recommend that you continue your current processes, and this is one of your best qualities. So Michael will take us through the rest of the sales process.
Excellent. So the 5th step in the sales process is the presentation. This is when you're describing your solution to your customer and why it's the best fit for them. So a lot of what you're doing right now is describing similar products to what they might need, but because of the customizable nature of your product, it doesn't necessarily fit what they're picturing or what they will need in reality. What's a much better approach is to describe a situation where you had to customize a product for another consumer. Whether it is completely unrelated, it is not as important. It's more the fact that you were able to customize the product and able to find a solution to their problem. The Mexican customer will understand this and will trust you more, knowing that you can deal with difficult situations and deal with the customization factor, and they'll be much more responsive to your pitch. There's also the customer testimonials. So with your successful customer customizations, we recommend you film videos of current customers or have written messages from current customers to be posted on your website and available upon request to send to potential prospects so that they can hear firsthand the excellent service you provide and how well your customized product has worked for them. The sixth step is the close. This is how you finalize the sale. So it begins with remembering the cultural cues. Obviously, there's a lot of different cues mentioned, and this will come from the training that you receive before approaching the customer directly. And there's also scheduling, support, and follow-up. So when you finish the sale, obviously you do know support is very important, especially with the machinery you provide. So you want to proactively schedule a follow-up with the customer just to check in and to keep that relationship going strong, so they don't feel like you left them behind and that you still have that strong relationship with them instead of a weak link. Lastly, this is the actual follow-up itself. So the follow-up begins with semi-annual Skype calls. We recommend this so that even if there's not an issue with the product, you're showing that you're not forgetting about the customer and that you're still staying relevant with them and keeping up to date with their business. It's possible that they may have a new need that arose that requires one of your products, but they're not aware of it. And you can then provide another solution for them and therefore build a stronger relationship even further. This goes along with maintaining relationships and is paramount to your success. Now moving into the implementation, We have the 3 steps for you, written in Spanish, which will already begin the training. There's diseño, which is the design phase. There's construir, the build phase, and lastly, realizar, the perform phase. We'll take a look at diseño, which is the 0 to 6 months. Diseño begins with Spanish lessons, which have already begun, I guess. The next point is the cultural sensitivity workshops. This was mentioned previously. It'll be for the entire office, if possible, because it's very important for everyone to understand what is going on and what is the best way to deal with these foreign countries. It's possible that perhaps an engineer is contacted who is not the right person to contact. They'll still need to know how to handle the situation, and it's very important to recognize that. There's also the translation company. We did identify Trusted Translations as a large, trusted company that would be useful for you. There are other companies out there, and obviously more research can be done. This is just one we identified that would be excellent for you, and we would recommend them as well. Lastly, there's the creating the sales tracker spreadsheet, as Kelsey mentioned. This is very simply done in Excel. If you would like us to do this, we can do it for you. We've worked with many sales trackers in the past, and would be happy to get that started on your end. So moving on to the build phase.
So the construir phase, the build phase, which is 6 to 12 months, the first thing we want to do is really develop and post these customer testimonials. This is going to be really important for your product so that Mexican customers can see how great your product is and how much other customers love it, so that they'll be more inclined to purchase your product. The next is to actually travel to Mexico and meet these customers. You've already outlined that travel is a huge part of your business. It's needed that you see these people face to face and really work out what they want. So this will be happening in the midterm. Next, we want to email the video messages that were previously talked about to your prospective customers. So you'll also need to make the video. It won't be very long, just a 2-minute video, just to explain who you are and start that relationship going. Lastly, we want to attend the Pescamar trade show in Mexico City, which is happening in June 2017. This is a very large seafood trade show, and at this trade show, you'll be able to meet many seafood processors who can benefit from using your product. And Shannon will take us through the long term.
So for the last portion of our timeline that we've outlined for you, we have realizar, which is the 1 year to 2 year time frame. First, we recommend that you continue to follow up with existing and potential customers, and so maintaining this relationship in the Mexican market is truly key. It was noted that one of the big risk factors was the after-sale services being from a distance, and as the Mexican culture has a little bit of higher risk avoidance, fostering this relationship and following up often and making sure to mitigate any problems is truly key to cultivating your reputation in this market, as well as keeping customers satisfied. Next, we also recommend that you hire a bilingual sales associate at this point. So for the first year, you'll be covered with the translation company you'll have hired and use their translation services. However, we recommend that you have an internal sales associate who is fully bilingual in order to help you grow the Mexican market in the future. If you should so find that the translation company isn't working out for you, you can move the step up a little bit earlier in the plan as you should see fit. But we believe that a year is probably a good time for this. So next, Michael will take us through the financial portion.
Thank you, Shannon. So for the horizons, what we see in the future, for the sales, because of the customizational nature of your product, we didn't look at forecasting sales for the very reason that they would simply be inaccurate. We can't predict what type of machine you will be building for your customers, and we decided that would be best left to you in the future. However, we did outline a budget for you, which will be accurate and will be a very good way for you to estimate what kind of costs you will be encountering upon this journey. So it begins with the translation company. This is something that's very important as they will be translating the website for you, as well as many of your emails and creating subtitles for the videos. They will also be present in meetings for your company, representing you if there is a language barrier. We have $100,000 Canadian set aside for this. The reason being, you want to make sure you're getting the best product possible and that there's nothing lost in communication between yourselves, the company, and the customer. There's also the culture workshop. We have $5,000 set aside for that. It's an in-house workshop that would be provided by a company and would be simply 1 day, very simple, but it allows you to really learn about the Mexican culture and can be actually a very fun way for your team to bond as well as you learn about new things together. There's also these Spanish lessons. Now, Spanish lessons would be for the marketing manager and the two engineers for your company. This is so that if they do need to be contacted, they can have a basic knowledge of Spanish. It doesn't need to be perfectly fluent. That is what the translation company is for. It's just to have a basic understanding. If there is a simple need, it's just a way to show respect, essentially. that they respect the culture, and that if there's a simple need, it can be sent across. It's very likely that the Mexican counterparts will also have this basic knowledge of English, and you're really just returning the favor to them. There's the travel budget. We have set aside $150,000, as there will be a lot of travel involved. Fortunately, a lot of it is focused in Mexico, and with the videos and the strong relationships, these will be fewer trips, but more enjoyable ones as well. Lastly, there's the trade show in Mexico. This is set aside at $10,000, leaving a total budget of $275,000 Canadian. Now, the translation company, as you can see at the bottom, this can potentially become the employee hired in the budget going forward if it does come to that.
Now that we've gone through our whole North model, let's make sure we've checked everything that we set out to do. So the first thing we said was that we want to secure at least 2 Mexican customers. We have outlined 2 possible customers for you, and we believe that with the strategy that we've given to you today, this is very possible over the next 2 years. The last thing we've done is we wanted to increase your response rate to 15 to 20%. This is doubling your response rate that you had previously, and we believe that with these new video messages and email follow-ups, you'll be able to do this very well. Shannon will take a look at the looking forward quickly.
So an additional piece of food for thought we had for you when we were considering this case was the growing interest in insects as a food source as the world moves towards more sustainable food. We consider that Southeast Asia, which consumes a lot of insects as food, would be an interesting place for you to go in the future, considering that you could program your machines similarly to seafood. So just something for you to consider there.
All right, thank you, Shannon. So we've gone over today the cultural differences between Mexico and Canada, as well as the customers that you will be discussing with in Mexico. We've gone over that it's not necessarily a handshake that is the best way to go about introducing yourselves and meeting them. The best way to do it is to learn about them and to respect their culture, as they will certainly be respecting yours. Thank you.
I would like to know more about culture sensitization that you have in your strategy. How is that, aside from some of the things that you mentioned in your strategy, from an ongoing point of view, how will that be done with the people you're going to have on the ground?
I think it's important to get just the basic ideas before you go to Mexico, understand how to properly introduce yourself, understand the basic learnings, but I also think constantly going to trips to Mexico and building relationships with a Mexican client, that will happen naturally. You'll learn more about the business culture in Mexico just by meeting with these people and constantly interacting with them. So I think the workshop is a great place to start, and I think building those relationships is really what's going to carry that forward.
You talk about building a personal relationship, and I'm just wondering, have you considered hiring a representative in the market in Mexico, that they would be hands-on and more readily available? Is that considered in your plans?
Yeah, we did look at that when we were assessing the situation. One of the main difficulties with that would be that the individual would be so far removed from your company. They would have a lot of difficulty keeping up to date with your team, and it would involve a lot of travel back and forth. It's a lot more effective to have the hired representative that we mentioned staying in Canada, but still available to communicate effectively with the Mexican counterparts. And the cultural learning will allow the entire team to have a bit of that background to draw upon, and will be able to respect them just as well.
I like the idea of having Skype calls. So in what particular area do you think that they would be more useful? Is it on the sales end, on the production end? Like, tell me, how do you see it?
So the reason for the Skype calls, they are available for the sales. However, they shouldn't be the primary method. The reason being, the communication is much more rich when it's face-to-face in person. You can't shake hands over Skype. And this is something that will definitely come across in relations. Skype is more a tool to be used at a moment's notice when you cannot necessarily visit Mexico. This is excellent for support. If the Mexican customers do need support, they're not going to be wanting to wait a week or a couple of weeks while engineers can go down and look at them on the ground. It would be much more simpler for them to be able to communicate over Skype, and if needed, then decide whether it's effective to head down to Mexico to support them in person.
You did identify 2 potential clients that could be targeted, and however, I was wondering, would we be looking at the entire country of Mexico, or focusing, because you also talk seafood, so I'm assuming that that would be more coastal, but I'm wondering what would be the plan? Would we be focusing more on specific areas of Mexico?
Yeah, Zet is very good at customizing. So currently they have many different machines they've already built in the seafood industry, and so they have a lot of experience there, and they have their work to show for it. So as a starting point, it might be easier to begin with seafood, so coastal areas like you say. However, as their presence can grow in the Mexican market, they can start attending different trade shows and branching off into different parts of agriculture in Mexico.
You've talked about communicating our competitive advantage. How do you see that happening in practice?
So that would come back to the idea of showing the customization that's been done in past projects. So the competitive advantage is the fact that the Zet Machine Vision is able to customize a product that suits their needs, the needs of the customer perfectly, which no other company is able to do if it requires customization right now. This is something that you're able to show via these testimonials, as mentioned, but also just in person discussing what has happened with past customers in certain tricky situations that your intelligent team has been able to come up with solutions to solve. By showing this and contrasting this with the customer that you'll be dealing with, they'll see just how hard you work for your customers and just how intelligent your team is and creative they are when it comes to finding their solutions.
You've talked about the training for the engineers and as well for language. Myself, having done some language training, is it feasible to say 6 months on technical language? Because you're saying, or if you're going to hire a translation firm, is it going to be a translation firm that has the technical knowledge? Because we are saying we're a customized company, so basic
Question
Spanish.
period is now finished.
Can we still respond?
No, it's not. Sorry.